Hi folks, Gary here from Fugitive Bushcraft. Today I'm taking a more detailed look at the Perry McGee Pro Tracker Mark 1. Pro Tracker Mark 1 is the uncoated version. Pro Tracker Mark 2 has a parkerized black version, and I'll come on to those in a minute. The knife has been designed by Perry McGee from the National Tracker School. Perry McGee, as you probably are aware, is Eddie McGee's son, the famous survivalist and man tracker that was around in the 70s and 80s. This has been designed with Perry's experience as a tracker who's had to deal with things like poachers shooting at him, law enforcement, forensic gathering, and those kind of scenarios. In many ways this is quite hard to talk about because tracking scenarios, the tracking is the same in terms of the practice, but it varies so much in different operations. For example, you could have a search and rescue tracking team, police forensic tracking team working on a scene of a crime, and search and rescue could turn into a forensic scenario where foul play has been found. So they kind of cross over. We also have anti-poaching, military trackers, wildlife tracking, and a lot of this still fits into their remits. And it's kind of, as I say, it's kind of hard to talk about because the roles vary. The tracking principle stays the same, but the roles and how they get deployed and what equipment they need may vary. So first of all, let's go over some of the dynamics. It's a 6-inch blade, 2 1/4, just under 2 1/4 I should say, no, 2 1/4 depth, and approximately 10.5 inches long overall. Weighs about 500 grams, and I can't remember what the steel is, but I'll come on to that and I'll put it up on in a bit. The knife is individually serial numbered. This one is the same one you saw in the previous video that I brought from Perry, and that is kind of registered to myself and becomes part of forensic in terms of proving, and I'll come on to that in just a second. It comes with tools on the back, fire steel, and these 2 probes. First one is a right-angled bar, measuring scale in centimetres. The second, with the triangular end, still has the measuring scales in centimetres and also has a point. This one is a ballistic probe. The idea being is that you can check to see how deep a bullet has gone in, and that will tell you the sort of, by type of round, how far it's penetrated with the material. It gives you a distance of range it was fired from. This one on its own is also good for indicating significant sign that might be relevant, such as footprint with blood spots, that kind of thing. It also goes through these holes, and the idea being it can rest over the top of a, again, sign without disturbing it, and you can use the measurements for scale. This one is kind of used same way. that lays down the side of the track or sign, and you have the scales here and scales here, and you can still also use this one to point to something significant. Going back to the number, the reason they are individually numbered is if you're doing a law enforcement or forensic application and somebody argues that these marks aren't centimetres, you have the reference number on your knife, and you can then sort of give them the knife, sort of saying that's the knife number, this is individual, and they could then check the scales. That is kind of important when modern day technology is also coming into tracking within the roles of cameras, digital cameras, smartphones, tablets that search and rescue teams are using, police have started to use, military start to use them, because it means you can take a photograph, send it, and within that photograph it could also have location detail, metadata of lens, distances, exposure information, time, date. All that is obviously kind of forensic data logging, and is kind of quite important in terms of integrity and so forth. The knife also comes with high contrasting paste beads. Obviously they're just, you know, they're not tracking specific. The idea being as well, it's good to have something that's highly visible with yourself. The knife can also be stuck into the ground with a row of tracks or sign going alongside it, and that can help sort of establish and solve tracking problems because you have a high vis marker in long grass, etc., and you can sort of help come up with a solution or interpretation or hypotheses. They obviously come off. If you're a sort of like tactical or military tracker, you'd obviously swap over a different colour piece of parachute cord. The beads are actually quite good quality as well, and yeah, they're made by the Scouts. So yeah, the lanyard as well is 30 inches, and that can also be used. The average pace of an adult is 30 inches apart, and if you have like a lot of confusing tracks or people have walked over tracks or the sign, you can open this out and you can sort of use that to gauge where the other person's tracks are. So it's very similar to a sort of technique as a tracking stick. This is, as I say, is the unpolished, sorry, the uncoated version. It will rust and it does need to be oiled when not in use. I normally just carry a little bottle of cooking oil. In a way, cooking oil doesn't interfere with any food preparation and doesn't taint the taste or give you any poisoning or chemical poisoning. If you use a knife a lot, then you know uncoated blades are fine because you're constantly using them, constantly keeping an eye on them. If you're in areas that are very wet, salt water, or perhaps military, then the parkerized version would probably be better for yourself. Being polished, being semi-polished also means that it's also used as a signal tool. You can use it to highlight. Not that I can do it right now because there's no sun. You can use it to highlight, I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not. Lift shadows, that kind of thing. Use it also as a signal mirror. You can use these holes through here and do the two finger thing, and you can sort of flick it between, you'll see where the light's hitting your hand through the holes, and you can signal to whatever, or someone, plane, etc. that's between your fingers. Going over the anatomy, there's obviously the scale here, these probes spaced around so you can avoid putting the probe into the actual sign or track. Obviously it has his name, the knife and logo on it. Made by Scorpion Knives, stroke Samuel Staniforth, Sheffield Steel, made in England. going over the anatomy, it's a clip point. Normally clip points are found on things like military bayonets, that kind of thing, and obviously it has penetrating power for going through flesh. This, however, really isn't a military knife. If I take a typical model clipper, you'll see that has got far more penetrating power than the protractor tool. The clip edge is rounded, the idea being that you can use bamboo. Bamboo obviously fractures quite easily if it's a sharp edge, and it's really there for battening, and same with this side here as well. If you're cutting a long piece, so like a self bow, you know, making your own bow, if it drifts and you can't get to this point anymore, you still have this one here that you can then carry on tapping and bring this one back out. So it's able to batten through quite long staves and stuff like that. On the back here, it's flat, very much like an anvil. You can stick that into a tree log, hammer it in, heat up nails, bits of wire, turn them into arrowheads, tools. You can also turn it round, use it as a hammer to tap them in. There's also a fire steel on the back of the sheath. Typical Swedish Army style. I know Perry wasn't particularly happy with this because it was meant to come with a hacksaw blade, and this is how they get them, and this is how it's been packed. There's quite a bit of paint on here, so it doesn't particularly strike very well. The cord isn't much use. I'm not a big fan of the piece of cord on this, but you know, you can still strike off the back edge if you so wish. I'm not a huge fan of doing that on knives personally, because if I just pull this out and it has a striker on it, I don't have to take the knife out, and that can be, you know, in the military you always taught to use one piece of kit, put it away. So having two bits of kit out to sort of do a job when one will do is kind of more common sense. Also, with a piece of hacksaw blade, of course, you know, as Perry recommends having on there, you've also got a saw, and you can sharpen the end, use it as a very small knife if you needed to. I dare say, you know, it's not a big issue really with the fire steel, so I'm sure everybody else will put in their favourite fire steels as they see fit. And you know, this really should be a piece of shot cord, so it locks itself into the pocket. The point here, if you're making divots for bow drills, it rotates around this centre line here very, very nicely. It's not the best point I've had for doing bow drills. Normally more blunter tools are found to be better. This one kind of penetrates too deep and doesn't have the width that I like, but yeah, that's also part of me, you know, as I get to know the quirks of it more, I'm sure I will learn how to achieve that part of the problem quicker. On the back here there's obviously a thumb stop and the little saw teeth. They're blunt, they aren't going to hurt your thumb. They're designed for gloves, when you're wearing gloves, because your thumb will slip, so therefore you have a purchase option for when you're using your gloves. There's a small finger choil here to choke up on. You can bring your thumb right into this back here, and this again is all rounded off, so it's really good for getting your hands on. Blade is obviously curved, great for scraping hides, scraping the membrane off, and you can get your hands onto the back here, use it as a draw knife as you wish. The back of the blade is kind of really very safe if you're I've been cutting things like frozen chicken foods and that kind of stuff, and you can get your hands on the back of there, add leverage as you need to. Clip point blade. This is what I did earlier. This is like the third time I've had a go at doing this video, and I've been hindered with technical problems, recording in the wrong formats and all sorts of things, because the camera seems to have gone haywire for some reason. But yeah, you know, putting notches in for things like traps, you can get that in there, clean it all out quite nicely. The saw back will also clean in, use it as a rasp. So they call these things saw backs, but they're very rarely used as a saw. You can also use it for grooving pieces of wood for cordage to run through or get stopped. And it's actually quite effective. It makes quite a decent rasp. And that's one I did earlier, and another quick go on that one. Blade, you know, is 54 Rockwell, which is slightly softer than most people would normally get on a knife. That means it's easier to sharpen if you find a nice smooth stone out of a river, etc. You know, that kind of thing. Therefore you have something to maintain the edge, supplied by nature. This part here is predominantly chopping. Again, this one would be sort of sharpened up for fine cutting, and same on this side for trimming sticks, feathering sticks, etc. The blade is a secondary grind. I'd have expected it more to come with a convex grind, which clears wood away slightly more, and I'm quite used to using knives with convex grinds, so I'm getting used to going back to a straight grind at the moment. I'm also looking into sort of little pocket sharpeners that will work well with this at the moment, and I'm experimenting, so I'll get back to you on that one in another video. Out of the box, when I was at the Bushcraft show, and say this is the one you saw, you probably noticed that Perry cut his finger on it. It was razor sharp. It would take off the hair off the back of your hand, no problem. Slicing pieces of paper, absolutely no problem. I've never really been a big fan of slicing bits of paper though, because it's not really what I buy a knife for. Handle, linen micarta, doesn't soak up water. It will get wet, but it doesn't soak it up. The finger grooves obviously gives you good purchase, even if it is wet, oily. If you're game prepping with blood, you know, it still supplies you with plenty of grip. Gloves also work, as do mitts. There are pictures of this one with a beech handle, similar to the Lofty Wiseman tool, survival tool, and they sort of didn't like the beech handle because things like mittens wouldn't work with it, and so they settled for the linen micarta. Spline fastened and standing force, when they make these are all locked in with thread lock as well. Tang obviously goes all the way through, it's all one piece. I, again in the previous video was hammering this like so to split a piece of wood. It was actually bigger than this one, and there's no damage at all on the back of the handle or linen micarta, so you can, you know, really beat up on it as you wish. So I've had a good session battening with it. It's still got its edge there, it's still sharp. I've not had to do anything with it other than lubricate the blade. There are some marks and stains that these will all actually come off. They're not permanent markings at all, just dirt and tree resin. In terms of value for money, these are selling for just under £120 in the UK. It reminds me in some ways of the MOD survival knife, which is about what, 50 quid. Absolute, you know, nice knife in lots of ways, but the quality of manufacturing, the grinds are all shot and all over the place on them. The handle is also just a hardwood and causes sores on your hand because of the way the rivets have gone in. The other knife that it reminds me of is the Wilkinson sword survival knife that was out in the 80s. I think I paid about £220 for that at the time, so it would be even more to date. It's 5mm thick on the back. The Wilkinson sword MOD are 1/4 inch thick, a lot heavier, and this is kind of much more lighter. And one of the problems I found with the Wilkinson sword one was partly the weight, partly it was highly polished stainless steel, and it was in the military at the time, so that doesn't go down too well. And it also had a gristle saw here, which really annoyed me. And although it was a good knife, it wasn't, you know, my favourite. This one, it's kind of hard. I find it kind of hard not to like. There's nothing on here I don't particularly like. As I say, making divots for bow drills is perhaps the slightest niggle I have, but I think that will just be overcome with use and when I get to learn the little quirks that all knives have. Obviously, a survival knife kind of design rather than a bushcrafting knife. You know, trackers, they have to move fast and light often. If you're doing search and rescue, obviously the purpose is to catch up with the person that you're trying to rescue. So you have to go faster than the person travelling, and you are having to constantly stop, check sign, try and assess the direction, where they're heading. So, you know, and you don't have a choice in the route that you take. You know, it's not like backpacking where you decide, okay, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take this route. Trackers have no idea where they're going or the terrain they're going to end up in. So that is kind of where this has come from, I think. Because it's kind of wide, if you're into Nesmuks or Warthog type blades, you know, you're going to like this because you can get your hand on the back there. You can use it for doing fine cuts of hide for making laces, food preparation, chopping, that kind of thing. It's pretty cool. Curved handle. I kind of like it. It sits well. It means the blade comes down early, and often all you need is a quick wrist action. And you know, so you can. Sometimes in survival situations you need to work fast. It might be that you just need to make a tent peg to stop something blowing away, or a tarp blowing away, for example. And where bushcrafty type knives are sort of slicing, I'm not doing this properly, I'm just demonstrating actually. More this kind of scenario with this, if you want to put a point on, and it's just flick of the wrist. And that was also, you know, if you're working in a confined space, you're building a shelter under a blown over tree and you need to move some roots, you know, you haven't got much room to move, like with an axe or bigger tool, machete even, you know, this being sort of 6 inches, quite in there. Very capable chopping action to it. Removes quite a lot of material effortlessly, really, because You know, as I say, it's just motion that you're creating rather than using muscles. So it's not tiring. The other thing with this tool as well is it has magnetic properties. It's normally unusual for a tool like this to have magnetic properties, and obviously if you have something like a compass, you want to keep it well away. Now anything metal will affect a compass. Not, you know, this isn't magnetised, but it will still affect it. The glass in spectacles, don't usually try and take a bearing at a metal fence or metal gate that you get on farms. Any rifles, for example, will all interfere with that compass, and I kind of like the fact that it's magnetic, because you then know to keep it well away from the compass, and it literally spins it round all over the place. You can also use this, suspend it with a piece of thread, and it will swing north-south, being magnetised. It's a slow process, I have to say. It does depend on the thread that you're using to suspend it. Balance point is just a fraction forward of the guard. Nice quick chopping action, as I say. The sheath has plastic liners riveted down both edges. Inside there's like a leather stopper, both sides, one press stud. It can be used left or right. It will go in that way or that way. Obviously when you put it in, do keep your fingers away from the cutting edge. That's just common sense. It doesn't mean there's a problem with the sheath. Simple press, it will stay in as it is. If you're running, because the weight of the knife, it will fall out, but it's no sort of like secondary if it just does temporarily come undone. There's also quite a bit of oil on there, because I've been oiling mine. Belt dangler, there's no quick release or opening on that, so it's a case of taking belt off, sliding it on. Perry says that you know, as I say, if it goes on your trouser belt, your rucksack strap will go over the top and not interfere with the knife. Perry, however, recommends that it goes that way up, and this would fasten onto the D-ring of his. He uses a chest rig for his tracking kit. That would go on a D-ring of a chest rig, and you just have a loop through on this one. It also comes with a bundle of parachute cord. I haven't got the parachute cord out here with me. I have loads of parachute cord, and that again is for solving tracking problems of where the footprints are, sign is, that kind of thing, as well as being cordage for survival use. Overall, very good. I'm kind of slightly disappointed that there isn't more loops and so forth on the back here. I think there's a lot of real estate, and it would have been good to have some additional loops for things like torches that people might want to carry. In here as well, this little pocket, there's still room in there to get little button cell micro light in there. And the front, again, you know, you could actually, Perry, when I saw him at the Bushcraft show, he had his knife, it was covered in camouflage tape. You can actually get, there's room enough there for a 2-ounce tobacco tin survival kit. You could quite easily tape it on using something like vet wrap, which is like a non-sticky, it sticks to itself but it hasn't got an adhesive on it, and you can just wrap that around, about £3 a roll. Sniper tape is another version, or camouflage adhesive tape, and you could actually put your survival kit on there. I'll do that in another video. I'm going to have a play, see how I can load it up. I'm not a huge fan of having everything all in one place though, because if you lose that, you've lost everything. You know, work on layers. Couple of things I'm doing at the moment is, after speaking to Perry and looking at his tracking rig, I'm going to be doing mine. I'm basing mine on a ribs front pack. I'll be doing some sort of tracking exercises and stuff to use with this. Quick shout out to Woodman661 on Twitter. Sorry this video has been delayed. As I say, I've had quite a few problems. As I say, this is the third attempt I've done at it now. A big shout out as well to Sumo Survival. They're on YouTube, look them up. Si from Sumo Survival also has one of these. He's got the black parkerized version, so I'm looking forward to seeing his videos and see what he makes of it. And in terms of, you know, knives, you know, this is a survival tool. It's not a bushcraft specific knife, although, you know, you've got Nesmuks and warthogs out there that bushcrafters use, so what is the kind of difference? In terms of, if you're into bushcraft as well, something like the Mora Clipper, 10-15 pounds, keep that in your pack, keep that on your belt. You can't really go far wrong. The Commando wire saw perhaps would also be an addition. I prefer a big knife just because I don't have to then sort of, oh right, okay, I need an axe for this bit, need to take the axe off my pack. Where's the saw? Go into a different pocket, different pouch for a saw. You know, this will do pretty much 90% of the work that I would need to do, and even the 10% I can get round in other ways. And that's basically it, guys. Yeah, so check out Sumo Survival, subscribe to them, sumosurvival.com. If you want one of these, go to thetrackingshop.com or nationaltrackingschool.com, or Staniforce, they all sell them. And also I'm looking at other ways of carrying this. I don't really want, I don't actually have a rig anymore, so I kind of like it on the belt. It's fine. You can't sleep with it on your leg, it's kind of a bit too thick and bulky, and it's mostly these actually sticking in you was the problem. Obviously soldiers often have to sleep with their kit on, so having it on a chest rig would work. But also, if you take your chest rig off, then your knife's stuck on your chest rig. So I'm looking at alternative methods to carry on this, and different sharpeners, little pocket sharpeners that will work well with it. And as I say, we're doing some little tracking exercises. Perry, by the way, has also invited us out on one of his tracking sessions, teaching sessions, and I'll probably take him up on that and go up to see him in Yorkshire and get even more info on this knife. There's aspects to this knife that it's not all out there, you know, like the magnetic properties. The reason it's magnetic is to do with forensic applications, and Perry did explain it and tell me how to use it for those, but he didn't want it broadcast, and I'll obviously respect that and not broadcast it. Although I can see quite, you know, from what he was saying, I could see that being very useful into sort of urban tracking scenarios for police and forensics. That's it, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you're doing well. If you have any questions or comments, add them below, below the video, or on the website, and see you soon. Cheers.